life, I have been attracted to and equally have chosen the men who cannot distinguish or delineate their pleasure from their trauma. In college, I learned the term exoticizing, which is deeming someone beautifully inferior so that you can enjoy the wonder of them without feeling like you have to respect or even protect it. The problem is, if you don't do the latter two, you more than likely will end up trying to colonize or destroy it. I can openly admit that some of the men in my past fetishized me, even when they weren't effing me. Liam was fascinated by Latinos and their welcome of him despite being black. He felt rightfully disloyal in his affinity and desire for a race that wasn't his own while having gripes with the one that he felt mistreated him in terms of his sexuality, his dark skin, and overall desire to be more of a woman. He passed his time torn between wanting to accuse every Latino of secretly hating him and being racist while also wanting to have sex and fun with them. My father swore he was not at all greedy or materialistic because, like Mitch McConnell, he came from a background that was extremely impoverished. In his head, being so subjected to a dehumanizing poverty totally veiled how he dehumanized the homeless and anyone that asked him for money, like his wives. Meanwhile, Dariel enjoyed my openness and equal ability to be a center of attention in any circle, except when it outshined him or sparked a sense of presence that would leave some loving me or hating me, or in his head, us. I never surrounded myself with men that didn't have some level of hidden pleasure due to some childhood pain and childhood prejudice, which is why Kyle fit right into my group of exes. All my life, I've had multiple friendship groups and would be called what some would say a floater, not to be confused with that one turd that did not flush down properly down the toilet. Even in terms of work, I've always had multiple jobs going. At first, I thought there was something wrong with me, that I didn't have a solid group or job as much as solid people and projects. But now I just see that I'm layered and adventurous and ADHD. When I hang out with my Broadway babies, I'm the queen of musicals, and we relive the greatness of ragtime. When I'm with my lawyer political friends, we speak about injustice as if we're a bunch of Che Guevaras and not corporate hacks. When I talk with my girls, we are ready to burn bras and calories. And I get to reveal a side to me that perhaps both those two prior groups and the many others I'm a part of just don't know. I have so much to give, and that is what Kyle liked about me. And out of all my exes, he was a giver when he wanted to be. Out of all my relationships, Kyle was definitely one of the briefest, but sometimes I think the shorter, the more impactful. I've been in relationships that by week three I knew should have ended and stayed in for a few years to process with the person that they were not my person. My usual trauma response is to fight to like somebody until I end up disliking myself, which is how my dad's abuse became so tolerable. I had to hate me to love him. Yet Kyle was a breath of fresh air. We had shared the same friendship group, the popular crew. My life can be defined by a tussle between absolute isolation and social outcasting or absolute fame and social revelry. I've just been through so many instances where I was either known by no one or known by everyone. And Kyle was kind of the same. He was a popular hockey player and had piercing blue eyes and blonde hair. His features were very similar to a young Chad Michael Murray, and he was by all means my first white guy. All my life, I have dated across features and races and sometimes sexuality, which sometimes I didn't even know. Yet, if you line up the people I dated in a row, they may not look like each other, but they all act like each other. They are smart, but borderline stupid, arrogant, but borderline charming, funny, but borderline mean, original, but borderline my dad. Kyle was actually really sweet, and even my friends were shocked that his Brad Pitt energy liked me, especially because I didn't even fit Latina stereotypes. I was curvy, borderline chunky, I was outspoken, borderline loud, and I was fun, borderline insane. Meanwhile, he was known in our group for his relaxed nature and ability to laugh and talk to anyone. Though we had shared mutual friends and even glances, it was one casual night at a house party where he sat next to me and we spoke about everything. He was the first guy that ever admitted, despite being in our 20s, that we still enjoyed good morning cartoons. He was surprisingly well versed in the history of 90s indie rock and 80s cinema. He loved flute music and wished his brothers made sushi their go to drunk food over pizza. There were so many quirky details to him that made me feel like I had found somebody as eccentrically layered as I am. The ease from which we spoke to each other was so majestic and refreshing because I had grown too accustomed to conversations, especially with men, that felt like sparring matches. I was always deemed smart and wise beyond my years, which made many men feel a real urge to quiet me. Yet Kyle listened and talked and was just so lovely and mesmerizing for how unmemorable he would become. We would date for 5 months, and within an instant, I picked up a red flag. For Kyle, I was not his usual taste. If you lined up his ex girlfriends, they did look alike, and probably managed an Instagram account with over 20,000 followers and a few reviews by Jeffree Star. He had a Leo Venus, which meant he was always attracted to beauties, and he was one. But this time he was attracted to a Leo personality. He laughed at my dynamism and sparkling intelligence without feeling competitive with it. In private, he would cherish me, but then we would go to a party and it would be like we were acquaintances again. Once again, in private, he would love up my body and grab me like I was a piece of sushi. But in public, he barely held my hand 3 times. Twice was to help me get through snow, and the last time it was because it was so dark outside. He was really just helping me get through night. When confronted on his lack of public intimacy compared to his private, he simply asked me to understand that though I meant the world to him, and he really did like me more than anyone he ever liked before, he was not ready to show that to the world because A, I was Latina, B, I was fat, and C, I was not of his wealthy background. He had laid out our systemic differences so clearly we might as well have been a YA rom com out on Amazon Prime. He had marked the parts of me that were just casual and always there, as if they were barriers to this great love story he wanted to write with me, but the world had a big eraser. I felt both bored and entertained. For however much I liked Kyle, I didn't like the overcast of his prejudices that he swore were not his, but that of the world. Yet he obliged. He had come so apparently with baggage that I became unattracted and eventually broke up with him, which actually hurt his feelings. He cried and begged for me to give him a chance and have some level of compassion with how he was trying to manage our differences and his attraction. It felt too heavy for the light that I knew we could be if he would just accept that he liked me. Okay, let's discuss. Let's heal. So, Kyle is such a strange portion in my love diary because I think out of, he's like the healthiest, unhealthiest relationship. I think out of all the men that I've ever been attracted to, he was bright and light and fun, but he had this wedge of kind of, I'll give you the world in private, but in public, I'll act like we've never even met each other in this world. And it was just so ew and strange and not, because I'm not the type of person to beg you to publicly acknowledge me. And to be honest, all my exes, I don't know, I got to really analyze the theme of public acknowledgement in my relationships because I don't want to lie and say, oh, yeah, they all claimed me. But I think, my father, one of his abuse tactics was hiding me and kind of making me feel like I was just this too big personality to take out. You're going to talk too much. You're going to talk too loud. You're going to laugh too hard. And these were all things that he did. Like, he was the center of attention. And I don't know if maybe he thought he was competing with me or just my mere existence would maybe question why he was the center, right? And I've had relationships, and you've heard it in past episodes, where we would fight in public, or he would embarrass me in public, but there was still, Kyle was one of those, like, we're not together the minute we leave this door. And he didn't even say it, he acted it. And it was very confusing because our relationship, on one hand, was super intense and very quickly so, but in private. So it's like the door would close and we were husband and wife. And the minute it opened, we were on two different tram lines, taking trains to somewhere else. And it was weird because of how much I liked him, how much he liked me, and how good it felt. I think I've said this in prior episodes, and I think I already published an episode of How to Avoid a Mr. H. Um, I've never felt fully safe in a relationship, and that definitely comes through my father's abuse and kind of this feeling of you can't really rest because you're with this person that is so volatile and is just on the cusp of a mental breakdown if you tell him that he's breaking you down. And it was so easy with Kyle for how uneasy it would be because I didn't like, why aren't you like I didn't say anything at the parties when he would just go and kind of act like I didn't exist. I didn't cry or fight it because I was gonna hang out with my friends too, and I'm not, Mrs. Claim me, but it was this weird kind of, I mean, we how are we with our mutual friends and yet it's like we're not hanging out. Like you won't even stand next to me. And it was this moment of, I don't think this is respect. So I confronted him on it. And he came out and said it. Listen, I come from a family that will not accept you because you're Latina. You're not from our wealth background. And you're the first person that I've really, really, really liked and connected with, but you're everything I'm not supposed to like. And it was such a, and then yeah, and even embody an aesthetic, my features, my weight. And I've never, listen, I know I'm curvy, I know I'm chunky, but Jesus, he acted like I was round. I might as well have been a circle he rolled everywhere. And it was this weird kind of, am I supposed to clap because of this honesty? Is this what we call refreshing? Like it was so, and he said it in a way because he was very relaxed. One of the things that was so charming about him was he was very chill and very smiley. And I loved, like I said, the details of him. I like flute music too, okay? I'm all about flute music or violin orchestras. Like he was so quirky. And yet he was telling me something that was so basic and so mundane. You're a Latina and my family. You know what? They don't want to hang out with the people they colonize. I don't understand, Kyle. But it's something that I bring up in the beginning. I've always attracted men that trauma dumped on me. And because I was raised to believe that love is pain and pain only glues you more to love, kind of, I've always, in my family, trauma dump was intimacy. Nobody liked to talk about their problems, but if and when they did, it was this trauma dump, and it was supposed to be treated as like, wow, we're closer because we just shared pain. And with Liam, like he loved and hated Latinos. He had a really weird relationship with his sexuality, with his blackness, and here he was being welcomed by a group that he swore was going to hate him. And I think it's kind of like there's this documentary with Will Ferrell that came out where he's doing a road trip with his best friend who was an SNL writer that transitioned. And she's a trans woman, and she loves monster truck rallies, and she finally goes to one, and she sits next to these group of guys who by all means would be defined as a redneck. And when we say redneck, we usually are trying to say some poor white guy, toothless and mean and arrogant and illiterate and uneducated and cruel because of it. And here were these men that she kind of came in with this prejudice that they were going to judge her. And they were so warm and friendly. And they were like, why don't you come out more often? And she said it, I thought everyone was going to hate me. And she goes back into the car and she realizes it says she hates herself. And it's this weird moment of kind of, I transition to finally love me and find that I still hate me and I still have this level of shame and fear of isolation. And it's really tricky, especially when you come from an oppressed group like my dad. For my dad, the biggest oppression he ever suffered was poverty. And he swore that it didn't make him materialistic and greedy, and it did. It made him a criminal. It made him, he had this weird relationship with homeless people, and that he would either give them a 20 and just like act like he was the king being charitable, or he would be that guy, go get a job, you dirty scum. Like, but either way, there was this form of, I'm above you. And yet he swore to himself he didn't act like that. That he didn't hoard money, that he didn't steal money because he knew how to be without it. And Dariel was another one. Dariel, what I really wanted to convey with that, Dariel was, he liked that I would be the center of attention. He liked that we would all hang out. But yet there was this level, this slight hint of misogyny, in that don't be too center or don't be a controversial center, which you would hear about in Don't Eat Your Pizza Like That. Like, be cool, never outshine me. Don't be too outspoken with your opinions, because at the end of the day, I like to be liked, and I like you because people like us together. I mean, in his head, we were a power couple, and I was like, turn the power off. But the point is, these were men that carried some level of prejudice in their dynamics with me and the world, and they had wounds that were either spiritual or systemic, that they couldn't wrap them. And in turn, they were looking for problems and unhealth and toxicity in their victims, in their relationships, which would become their victims, so that they could excuse why they enjoyed the person while at the same time bash them. Like, I can't fully love you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like their trauma took away their ability to just fully surrender to love. There has to be something wrong with you. There's something wrong with everybody. And if I don't make something wrong with you, you're going to see there's something wrong with me. And I just can't have that. And they just didn't know how to not be heavy in their relationships. And I think that's what happened with Kyle. And it was just so apparent. And there is this concept of dating a white guy, I think, with BIPOC women, in this concept that they're going to treat us better and that they're going to be kinder to us and healthier if they're not prejudiced and absolutely horrible to us, right? Like, it's this dichotomy of either he's going to be great or he's going to light a cross. And Kyle was, I never, I think the strangeness about my list of exes is that they really don't look alike, but they all are the same freaking personality. They're all arrogant, they're all funny, but actually bullies. They all love attention, but they swear they don't. And I think Kyle was different in every way, features, race, and also like genuine personality. He just was really easygoing and and exciting all at once. And then there was that wedge of like, I shouldn't be with you, but I really want to be. And here's the grand epilogue episode. He actually, I found out through the grapevine, not even Facebook stalking. That's what's so ironic. I don't think I've ever been on his Facebook, or at least not for a long time, that he got married to a woman that looks exactly like me and is Latina, and they have two kids. So happy ending for Kyle. He finally embraced what he was attracted to, because my friend met up with him, and yeah, he she met up with him, met his wife, and she was like, Deandra, she's you. She is you. And I was like, ah, I felt this weird kind of, I'm happy that he found his happy. and that he healed that part of him and it didn't sabotage him. Because that's the thing. When you embrace what you like, it's because you've probably embraced that you can be liked. It's this mutual thing. So I felt relief for him because he was happy with somebody and in turn was happy with himself. Like he finally reached this point where, like, F the world, let it say what it wants. Now his family has two Latino grandbabies. They're fine, you know? And as somebody who's doing that work now, I wish I would have taken it up as soon as Kyle did, but I'm really happy for him because let me tell you, it's hard to finally start getting better. But then you have examples like the men I mentioned before. And like my dad, you can really live and waste your whole life being an asshole and being prejudiced and swearing you're not because of insert whatever trauma, whatever race, whatever religion, whatever gender, sexuality, whatever childhood pain. Like, there's just always a reason for why you're not what you are. And when you finally become authentic and you finally rest in your joy, it's so relieving. And the only reason it's hard to get there is because we're taught not to be happy. We're taught that happy has some type of systemic rule and labeling. And when Kyle did that to me, he really didn't think he was being prejudiced. And he really thought he deserved some level of compassion for how unempathetic he was being. Because when he told me that, it was not only deeply hurtful, well, yeah, it was just deeply hurtful. And it was disappointing. And it was like, I felt fooled because I'm like, this guy was so cool. And now he's so uncool. And it was just, ugh. And it's funny because as I was writing this memory, I thought to myself, I didn't realize I had done an act of preservation and self-love. Because usually when you go to the past, it's hard not to want to punch yourself in the face and say, you idiot, always making the same bad mistakes. But now this was a moment where I was like, I'm really glad I let that go and I didn't fight for it and I didn't do a show or what I often do, which is overstay in something that I know right away is not good for me. And he wasn't good for me yet because he wasn't good with himself. And I'm glad that he got to be. Yeah. Check out daddyrecovery.com, check out deandrewmusicall.com, and check out Hardin on all music platforms.